Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jagan Mohan Tamarisa, and I'll be the moderator for today's presentation. I'm joined by my colleagues Satya Yerova and Ashley Insani, who are CPA and Chartered Accountant professionals, and who have leveraged their combined experience to incorporate several companies and file several tax returns. All three of us are from the Chugh firm, Reston, Virginia office. The Chugh firm is a full-service law and CPA firm based in Los Angeles, Santa Clara, Edison, New York, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C., with affiliate offices in several major cities in India. We have been in business for over 30 years. With a staff of 575 professionals, including 186 attorneys and CPAs, we do corporate tax and immigration practice, among other stuff. Our contact information will be displayed at the end of the presentation. If you have any questions during the program, please feel free to type it in the chat box. With this introduction, we will be jumping on to today's hot topic, Paycheck Protection Program. I like to give just a one-liner about this program. Basically, the Paycheck Protection Program is a loan designed to provide a direct incentive for small businesses to keep their workers on the payroll. That said, let's jump right into the program and ask our seasoned professionals, Satya and Ashleen, about what this PPP loan is all about, the forgiveness rules, and all the changes that have been brought into the program during the recent weeks and months. So let's begin with Satya. Satya, can you give us an overall on the financial assistance? Are the loans still available? Can companies still apply for it? And what all is going on in the Paycheck Protection Program?
Yeah, sure, Jagan. Thank you, Jagan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Satya Yerova. I'm CPA. Thank you for joining our webinar today. As many of you know, government has been assisting businesses and individuals with various financial assistance programs. PPP is one among them. I can say PPP and unemployment insurance benefits have really helped the economy in past few months. To put it in numbers, especially PPP helped almost 50 million jobs in US. Already $517 billion has been given as loan. $132 billion is still pending, and out of the allotted $650 billion. To use the remaining funds, loan application dates have been extended till August 8th. So if any of you or your friends are have not yet received PPP funds, they can apply for the PPP funds till August 8th. Interestingly, SBA declared borrowers list as well. Borrowers includes large restaurant chains, wealth management groups. So it was like unlike 3 months ago when the loan has started, this program has started. The intention of the PPP loan is for small businesses with less than 500 employees, and a lot of big businesses were not ready to apply, and some of them have applied, but they have returned the funds. But it looks like on overall, the intention of the PPP program is to maintain the employees on the payroll. So government also has relaxed a bit of restrictions and rules related to the PPP applications as well. And today's main topic is to discuss PPP forgiveness rules. To help businesses, government has issued new forgiveness rules, which are a lot more relaxed, and borrowers can get forgiveness if certain conditions are met. My colleague Ashley Sahani, she will discuss more about forgiveness rules in next slide. And in addition to PPP, there are certain other programs that are available, like economic injury disaster loans and Main Street Lending Program loans. That way, again, we will discuss it later in next few slides. This is kind of an overall brief introduction about today's topic as well as PPP updates. With this brief introduction, I think Jagan, over to you.
Thank you, Satya. That's a very brief and thank you for the update. So a couple of questions to you, Satya. If I'm a new employer or if I'm an employer who have not applied for a loan, you're saying I can still apply for it, correct?
Yes, you can still apply for it. The due date for the application was June 30th. Now the date has been extended to August 8th. I think a few of the banks have opened the or they have started accepting the applications for the loans. Some of the banks have still not started the application, but whatever the banks that is accepting the applications, of course, the businesses can apply.
Thank you, Satya. So to just give a clarification to the businesses, has this loan anything to do with IRS, or is this totally a program administered by Small Business Administration? Has anything IRS have anything to do with this? Do I have to worry that if I'm applying for a loan, the IRS will be putting an eye on my business?
No, Jagan, nothing related to IRS. This is purely intended for businesses to keep the employees on payroll. So as long as business have employees, they have payroll and they can apply for the loan and they can get the loan and they can apply for the forgiveness as well. So merely getting these loans will not have any impact from tax side or kind of it doesn't invite any audits or something like that.
Thank you, Sada. That's a very important clarification. So people who are listening into this call and still debating whether you want to apply for a loan or not, don't worry about the IRS. This is being a program administered by SBA. That's a very important clarification Satya is giving us. Thank you, Satya. Ashleen, can you please give us the recent updates on the Paycheck Protection Program? What all rules have changed? We see a lot of news floating around that the government is introducing new changes. Can you please bring up to speed us on that?
Absolutely, Jagan. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you all for attending the webinar. The government has made some major changes in the forgiveness rules. The main intent was to assure maximum relief to the businesses. Firstly, initially businesses were allowed 8 weeks to spend the entire loan. It has been now extended to 24 weeks. It gives a huge relief to every borrower. Earlier, we had to spend at least 75% on payroll. Now it has been reduced to 60%, which leaves up to 40% for non-payroll costs. Further, the business still needs to maintain employee levels throughout. If it has not been maintained, they can rehire the employees. The Act has also extended the date to restore employee count and wage levels from June 30th to December 31, 2020. Certain exceptions have been added to the rehiring rules, which we are going to discuss in further slides. Also, for the loans made after June 5th, the Act has extended the maturity date from 2 years to 5 years. Businesses will now have 5 years to repay any unforgiven loan. So these are basically the major changes that has happened in past few weeks regarding the forgiveness rules. Over to you, Jagan.
Thank you, Ashleen. So if I have already applied for a loan and received some funding from the SBA, am I eligible to ask for more if needed? Has anything changed on that?
So presently, no. Once every business is allowed to apply only once. Government is talking about bringing another loan, which hasn't been confirmed yet.
Okay, but they do have sufficient funding left for people who still want to apply and never applied so far. They can still go ahead, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Like Satya mentioned, it is still on. People can still go and get the PPP funds if they haven't applied already.
Okay, thank you, Ashleen. Listeners, whoever are on the call, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat box. We will take them up later. Going back to Satya, so the important part of the first part of the program obviously is applying for the loan and getting it. The second part that most people would like to know is the forgiveness. So can you share with everyone what all they need to know about forgiveness, what documentation wise, or what are the main threshold requirements to be eligible for forgiveness?
Yeah, sure, Jagan. So basically, as Ashley mentioned, there have been a lot of changes in forgiveness rules. The important one is the period of covered period. Basically, it has been extended from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. The advantage of this is that borrowers will get more time to plan and spend PPP. The important point to take note is now business will get forgiveness of $46,000 per employee versus earlier rule of $15,000 per employee. I can say this is a big advantage, especially for IT companies, as companies gets 2.5 times of their 2019 payroll, but they struggle to spend this entire amount within the 8 weeks period. So for them, it's a really a lot of relaxation in that front, and they can spend this money within 24 weeks and with a maximum amount of $46,000 per employee. This is one of the major change, and there are a few other changes that have been announced in flexible rules. The other important thing is businesses has to spend now only 60% for payroll versus 75% of the payroll cost in earlier rules. So this is again for IT businesses, it doesn't have much of impact, but other businesses like restaurants and other small businesses where payroll is less and other costs are more. So this is going to be a big difference for them as well.
Okay, so when you say non-payroll expenses, what sort of expenses would that be, Satya?
So non-payroll expenses basically covers utilities, our rents, mortgage payments, and insurance payments. So these are the major categories of non-payroll expenses.
So can I presume that the SBA has identified only a given set of expenses that qualify for the program, meaning the funds that can be used only for those kind of expenses?
Yes, so yeah, only few expenses are allowed. It's not that all the expenses that you spend on the business are allowed for forgiveness. I can say broadly like 4 or 5 categories. It's the important, the majority of expenses being payroll. Other than that, other expenses like utilities, rent, and mortgage payments. So these are the other few categories.
Okay. So with regards to the amount of forgiven per employee, is the maximum base 46,154?
So that is the maximum allowed. I mean, if any employee, if we pay less than $46,000, that is anyway that is allowed. But maximum cap is $46,000. So in excess of $46,000 is not allowed for forgiveness.
Okay. So is there a problem if I utilize less than 60% of the loan? Would it be seen as a negative factor?
So the 60% basically it is for the payroll expenses. So earlier rule says that at least 75% you need to use it for payroll cost, remaining 25% for other costs. Now that has been changed, and now the rule says that you have to use 60% for payroll costs. So that is the change, but as I said, for most of IT companies and service companies, this doesn't have much of impact because their 90% of the expenses are for payroll. So anyway, they are going to meet this threshold, and only this 60% payroll expenses, mostly this is more relevant for other businesses like restaurants.
Okay, got you. With respect to the restoring the headcount, it should be pretty much at the same level as of the date you are applying the loan.
Yeah, so so this is a bit of a complex FTE work. This is called a full-time equivalent employees. Basically, businesses has to maintain the same level of employees before pre-COVID period. So that is the broader rule, but as long as the business maintains the number of employees, let us say as on 30th March or February 15th, and if you maintain the same number of employees throughout this covered period, that means throughout your loan forgiveness application, then you are good. And there are again there are a lot of other workings that we need to do. Basically, there are some 4 or 5 comparisons that we need to do. A few of them being the number of employees as on February 15th is one of the criteria, and number of employees from Jan to 30th March is one of the criteria, and number of employees from Jan to April is one of the criteria. So this is all kind of a base rules, and you need to maintain this these number of employees throughout this covered period till the time of your forgiveness application. So yeah, so in detail workings that we need to do are like if any of the attendees they wanted to if they have any issue with relating to the number of employees or the number of employees gets reduced, then we need to deal that with separately. We need to check any of the conditions are met. So this is kind of a overall rule, but if you have any specific question, if any of the attendees have any specific question, that we can discuss it later.
Yes, thank you, Satya. So Ashleen, you know, COVID-19 is still causing a lot of disruption, you know, so people are applying for loans. This is what I'm hearing, and they're still struggling to maintain some levels in salary, etc. So can employers still reduce the salaries? Is there a safe harbor limit?
Yes, Jagan. So the businesses can reduce salaries, but any reduction in excess of 25% will result in dollar-to-dollar reduction in the forgiveness amount. But also, the point to note here is that any employee whose salary is over $100,000, they can reduce up till $100,000 and it won't impact the forgiveness. So majorly anything under 25%, we are good.
Okay. So how does the SBA see people who have resigned and left the company versus people who have been laid off? I mean, first of all, can they still be laid off? And if so, how does the SBA see the resignation versus layoffs?
So yes. So what happens is if the employees are resigning or are they being laid off, then obviously the first attempt should be to rehire those employees, because the main intent of PPP is to keep employees on payroll, right? Keep your employee counts at the same level, right? So to bring back the employee count, rehiring should be our first attempt. But if they have resigned voluntarily, then obviously it does not impact businesses or employers as such. Right, just the businesses need to make sure that they have documented resignation offers. And then also, if they are being laid off, then we need to make sure that we have rehiring. We did rehiring attempts either for the same employee or for the similarly qualified employee.
Okay, so there are businesses out there, they're trying to rehire or, laid off people or the new employees as such, but they're still struggling with projects wise and having sufficient work, etc. But if in the position they are not able to rehire, then what are the implications? So
if the businesses are unable to rehire, then like I mentioned earlier, they need to make sure that they either have documented resignation offer, which won't impact the forgiveness, or they have to document that they have done the efforts to rehire, right? Because if not, then it will proportionately reduce forgiveness depending on the reduction of employee, like how many employees have reduced from pre-COVID levels till date.
So I presume you have to submit some documentation at the forgiveness point for the SBA to take that decision?
Yes, so there are certain exceptions to rehiring. The only exception was that if borrower documents in writing an attempt and it was rejected by the employee. But government has made significant changes and has really relaxed this rule, which is a great relief for all the borrowers. If you're unable to hire the same employee or similarly qualified employee, Also, if business is able to demonstrate that it has not returned to the pre-COVID levels of the business due to restrictions laid down by the county, state, or government, especially for businesses such as restaurants, retail, malls, it is still unclear how that will be demonstrated, but we expect some guidance on this in future. But what we have to make sure that we are documenting are rehiring job offer letters, any rejection letter from the resigned employee, then any recruitment efforts we are doing to rehire any new employee or the same employee, then business profit and loss to show loss in revenue or loss in projects to depict that business has lost and we cannot return to the pre-COVID level.
Right. Thank you. So could you elaborate a little bit on the 8 weeks versus 24 weeks option? What is it that SBA wants us to do? In your opinion, how should this be planned by employers?
So any loan done after June 5th, there is no option. It's strictly 24 weeks. The covered period is 24 weeks. But the loans that were done before June 5th, they have the option to elect between 8 weeks or 24 weeks. Businesses can decide between the period. It won't come until the time of the forgiveness application. There are advantages to both. I mean, if we consider 8 weeks period, it ensures faster forgiveness. It's easier to meet the staffing requirements. If we talk about the 24-week period, we can ensure that the entire loan amount is spent and forgiven, especially for service companies and IT companies. They can achieve full forgiveness by just using this loan on payroll costs, and businesses would have time to strategize as to how to go about it. Right. So, they can choose a period between 8 and 24 weeks.
So you would recommend that the businesses reach out to the CPAs and discuss this in detail before going forward, right?
Absolutely. Like, Satya mentioned, there are detailed FTE workings, and then determining whether 24 weeks or 8 weeks, what will work out best for them. Because a lot of questions have come to us that we think we have spent our money, but spending it literally does not imply 100% forgiveness. We have to make sure that we are spending it as per the forgiveness formula if we have to be technical about it.
That's a very critical point, Ashley, thank you. So the businesses are reminded that spending is not the sole criteria for forgiveness. It's how you spent it and if you met the rule requirements. Thank you, Ashley. Satya, jumping back to you, I presume there is a particular application we need to submit for these forgiveness. How is that done? Do you submit it to the bank and does it make its way to the SBA? How does this all work?
Yeah, so application submission, it is to banks only. So most of the banks have online submission of applications. So I think some of the banks have started and a lot of banks have not yet started. I think they are in process of developing the software probably. So basically, once a borrower meets all the conditions, then we need to prepare all the documentation with supporting documents, and then wait for the bank to open the application and then submit it. So that is a simple procedure. And once the application is submitted, bank will take around 60 days to process the application and give the decision. So this kind of a overall application procedure. But again, the important thing here is whether business is meeting all the conditions or not. And in terms of conditions, especially employee count is one of the major thing. And once employee count conditions are met, then spending of the amount is not an issue, as we discussed earlier, based on the now 24-week rule. Pretty much every business can spend this amount on payroll. And then it is only the question is about maintaining the employees. So once these conditions are met, then I think any business can get the forgiveness.
So Satya, the 60 days processing time is not fixed. Is that correct? Or do they have to do that within 60 days?
It's not fixed. It's a kind of indicative. So again, the 60 days initially when the loan process has started, SBA has given kind of a guidance on this. But yeah, again, to answer your question, it's not a strict 60 days. It's a kind of indicative number.
Correct. So the business need not worry even if it exceeds 60 days. I mean, it's not like something bad is going to happen.
Yes, of course. And to kind of discuss this in detail, again, banks also they need to come up with a lot of things, and they need to come up with the procedure for review of the application. And again, this is a kind of a very new loan, and they don't have any precedents before, and they need to set up the conditions, and they need to have their internal control structure in place. Because again, tomorrow if there is any issue, SBA will audit banks, so there should not be any issue for the banks as well. So once all the internal controls are in place, then only banks will start receiving the application, and they will start reviewing the applications and give the forgiveness. So yeah, the businesses, no need to worry about it. As long as we submit the documentation and forgiveness application, then we are good.
Okay. So Satya, moving on, it looks like the forgiveness part of the loan is discretionary. Is that correct? And what happens if the loan is not completely forgiven?
Yeah, sure. This is actually a great question, and we get this question from a lot of our clients. So what I can say is with these relaxed rules, most likely businesses will get 100% loan forgiven as long as these a few conditions are met, which are very easy to meet. Again, as I said, meeting the number of employees, maintaining the number of employees, that is the only kind of a bit of an issue for some of the clients. But otherwise, it's not a with these relaxed rules. Most likely that all of the borrowers will get the loans forgiven. And having said that, if banks are not satisfied with any of the documentation, if banks think that some of the conditions are not met, then of course some of the amount will not be forgiven. If that is the case, then the amount will be, whatever the remaining amount will be converted to loan with 1% interest rate and with a repayment terms of 5 years. Earlier again, the repayment term was only 2 years. Now this has been extended to 5 years.
Okay. So in case if some part of the loan is not forgiven, I still do you think that you can still have some sort of an appeal right on that? Can you still go back to the bank and try to convince them? Meaning, is any part of it still appealable, or is it like a flat decision that's not appealable?
Yeah, so what I can say is the loan forgiveness applications are considered by banks, where businesses always have good relationships, and even if there is an issue with the documentation, again, it's a kind of some kind of a documentation requirements are not met. So banks will always come back to borrower and ask for more documentation. So as such, there is no appeal process as such, but if a bank consider that something is lacking or some conditions are not met, then always they will inform to the borrower that these are the rules, and these are the conditions that you haven't met, and based on this we are not able to forgive 100% of the loan. Then I think then in that case borrower has to kind of rectify, or they need to discuss with bank basically. So to avoid all these issues, what we would recommend is to review all the documentation prior to submitting it to the bank. That is one of the important thing, and if need, take a professional advice as well.
Yes, Satya, that's a great advice. I mean, whatever you want to do first, I mean, you want to do it straight. So I think that's really helpful. So what is the interest rate and the repayment plan?
Yeah, if loan is not forgiven, then as I said, it will be converted to a loan with 1% interest rate and with a repayment terms of 5 years.
Okay. So is this application process, what sort of documentation generally? I mean, I know it probably requires tons of documents, but in general, what do you think is the minimum requirement? What documents would need to be provided?
So there is a 11-page application for forgiveness that has been provided by SBA. Again, in application, there are two different kinds of application. One is the main application for that is applicable for most of the borrowers, and there is another application called easy application. So if a business meets certain conditions, then they can go for easy application as well, which is kind of a very simple form, and there is no need to go through all this FTE workings and this 11 page of original application. So if a business kind of meets some certain conditions, which we can discuss that later, then they can go for easy application with a, I think it's 1 or 2 page application basically. So apart from the application, the other major document that we need to submit is payroll reports and FTE workings and employee count supporting documents, and all other supporting documents relating to utilities like invoices, bills, and mortgage payments, receipts. So these are the other documents. Basically, whatever the fund, whatever the use that borrowers do for the PPP funds. So basically, we need to submit all the supporting documentation saying that they have used these funds for the purposes that are allowed.
Thank you, Satya. I mean, it pretty much appears that whatever area the PPP loan touches, you need documentation for that.
Yes.
So the next question is actually two-part. Is PPP loan taxable? And if not, are the expenses that are paid out of the loan deductible?
Yeah, again, this is a great question, and I think a lot of borrowers miss this point. Generally, if any business takes a loan and if that is forgiven, then that is considered as a taxable income for the businesses. That is the kind of a general rule. But in case of PPP loans, there is a clear-cut exemption saying that, okay, even if this loan is forgiven, this is not considered as a taxable income. So having said that, then IRS came into picture, and IRS said, okay, now you are not taxing the forgiven loan, but we don't allow the expenses that you have incurred out of this PPP funds as a deductible expenses. So indirectly, it means that this amount, whatever the forgiven loan amount, is taxable.
Okay. Thank you, Satya. Ashleen, so many businesses have already applied and received those loans, and few businesses are still considering applying for them. Their main focus is from SBA audit point of view. What can you tell us about the audit? Is there a safe harbor, and how should we prepare for it?
Sure, Jagan. So when submitting the PPP application, all the borrowers had to certify in good faith that current economic uncertainty makes this loan necessary to support ongoing operations of the business. But SBA and Treasury has confirmed that businesses who received less than 2 million of loan will deem to have made the certification in good faith. In plain language, if the loan amount is under 2 million, we do not have to fear SBA audit. But over 2 million, businesses may be subject to audit, and they might have a strategy to audit them. Also, we have to be mindful that in case of fraud or misuse, any loan can be subject to SBA review or audit.
Okay, so in terms of may audit question, I mean, it's a discretionary by the SBA, right? It's not like compulsorily it will be audited.
Yes, absolutely correct. So right now they haven't clarified, but yes, it's totally discretionary on SBA. Right.
So businesses don't have to worry for those who are listening in that just because you are applying over the 2 million threshold, not threshold, I'm sorry, but if you're applying over 2 million, it doesn't necessarily mean you will be audited automatically.
Absolutely. Just make sure everything has been followed in the right way, and it has been spent and everything has been documented. Like Satya mentioned, documentation is very important here.
Correct. Ashlyn, further, did SBA or anyone actually ever release examples of fraud or misuse? What would that be usually be like? Anything
So
that's like a red flag?
yes, so nothing specifically, but any ineligible use of the PPP loan, or if you have not followed any condition of the loan which you had certified but you literally went against it, or the company was not in existence and you had fraudulently took the loan. So there could be various instances, Jagan. Nothing has been specified as yet, but yes, we have to be very mindful of this.
Okay. Many businesses are still, like I was saying, feeling under the heat of the COVID-19, and they are applying for assistance, not only just COVID-19, the PPP loan, but various other loans that are available. But what is the double dipping that is not allowed?
There are a lot of relief measures out there, PPP loan being the major one for businesses, but certain, self-employed or independent contractors or, partners, they have been able to claim pandemic unemployment assistance funds, which is kind of an unemployment benefit offered by the government. But unfortunately, double dipping is not allowed. It might be tempting to avail all these relief measures, but it is strictly not allowed. If you did receive this unemployment benefit, we will advise you that you need to report this forgiven loan as income. You cannot avail both the benefit.
Right. So you would recommend a due diligence before applying forgiveness, that we have the business sit with us and discuss what all loans we have applied and received before even filing the application, right?
Yes, absolutely. The whole disclosure will be required. Yes.
Right. So now there are so many businesses out there incorporated in different forms: LLCs, sole proprietors, S corporation, C corporation. Is there any different way the forgiveness applies to each entity, or is there a cap on certain kind of entities and not on the others?
So intent of the PPP is to make sure employers are paid, right? And employees, no matter under what structure, the rules we have discussed so far applies to them. What is major difference amongst the structure is the owner, employee owners, or the LLC owner, or the sole proprietor, right? So for all intents and purposes, payroll means any amount which is subject to payroll taxes. So for sole proprietor uses Schedule C to report income, and they pay self-employment taxes on their net income. Hence, they are eligible for forgiveness based on net profit of 2019 Schedule C. Then partners, if we talk about partners, then partners' share of profit of partnership is also subject to self-employment taxes. That amount is reported on box 14 of Schedule K1. They can check their K1. It is clearly mentioned over there. They will be eligible for, again, 2.5 times on the monthly profit, obviously annualized at $100,000. That means maximum forgiveness they can get is $20,833 per partner. And also this has to be included in partnerships PPP application. Then for corporation, an owner of a C corporation or an S corporation, they're required to pay themselves a reasonable salary, which is basically subjected to payroll taxes. This is in addition to shareholders' distribution. So, but only that payroll amount will be subject to forgiveness. Distributions are not allowed. A lot of questions have come up to us that we are an S Corp owner. There was no payroll. Can we apply for PPP? So no, not at all. Only payroll that has been subject to payroll taxes or anything which has been subject to employment taxes will be eligible for forgiveness. And at any stage in any structure, the employee owners maximum amount is 20,833 for them.
Thanks, Ashley. Let me try to throw in a monkey wrench in here. So let's say if somebody owns multiple businesses, which may be in a combination, How does that affect their individual tax? And I mean, in a very general, broad sense. Now, you don't have to go too deep and specific into it. Does it have any effect on their personal tax, or if they own multiple businesses, does that really change anything?
It really depends on the structure, Jagan. You know, if it's a S corporation or a partnership, it is, you know, these are pass-through entities. Over there, the taxes or the income is reported or is flown through to the partner or the shareholder. You know, when it comes to C corporation, uh, we always hear about double taxation. So basically, you know, corporation pays their own taxes, and then shareholders pay whatever dividends they receive from the company. Then again, if you talk about sole proprietor, like we discussed, it depends on how they are structured, you know. So sole proprietor report on their own personal tax return. A Schedule C is there in their form. So it all depends on how they are structured, and, you know, that's how they are taxed.
Okay, thank you, Ashlyn. That was very brief. Going back to Satya, what are the next steps for the borrowers?
Yeah, sure, Jan. I think we have discussed most of the questions in detail. So as we kept on saying, it's basically with these relaxed rules. Now, the important thing for borrowers is to maintain employee count. That is one of the major criteria. And once these conditions are met, then the second important thing is to have all the documentation in place. And then wait for the bank to open the application for forgiveness. So as I said, some of the banks have already started taking the applications, and some of the banks just waiting to start the to take the information from the borrowers. As I said, like critical is to have all the documentation in place, and once that is done, then just to apply the forgiveness application with the bank. So that is kind of a next steps.
Yes, thank you, Satya. Is there does the bank charge any fee for filing this forgiveness loan?
No fees as such. It's actually the loan is pending with the banks, and now with the borrower submitting the applications, then they have to review the application and grant the forgiveness or convert it to the loan. So it's kind of an obligation on part of banks as well. So there is no fees as such.
Okay. Any other new programs coming out or restarted that businesses can take advantage of? Any new loans?
Yes, Jagan, surely. For all attendees, there are a few other programs that are going on. If any of you are interested in applying for these new loans, you can very well start exploring it. One is EADL. Most of you might aware about it. Economic injury disaster loans. Most of you must have already applied also. I think during mid of May, the SBA closed the applications, and then I think in mid of June they have restarted the process, and they have started taking the applications for EADL loans as well. So again, one main advantage here is even though if you get a PPP loan, you can still apply for EADL. So I think you can just log into SBA website and can apply for EADL loan. And most of the businesses are getting loans up to $150,000. Again, this is with the interest rate of 3.75% and a repayable period of 30 years. But there are certain conditions involved in it with regard to the usage. So EADL loans, basically you cannot use it for payroll purposes, if at all, if you have already obtained PPP loans. So EADL loans, basically you need to use it for working capital purposes. That is the main usage. And the other restrictions are once you get the EADL loan, you cannot use it for distribution of dividends or paying to owners as a bonus or gifts. So these are some of the conditions, but if you think that if we can meet any of the conditions, then of course means we encourage you to apply for EADL loan. That is one of the thing. And second one is Main Street Lending Program. This is another program Fed has launched recently. And to give an overall idea, Main Street Lending Program is for any business, mainly intending to give it for those businesses who has not got opportunity to apply for PPP loan. That means all major large businesses with employees of more than 500. Or having said that, even small businesses also can still apply for Main Street Lending Program. There is no restriction with regard to that. And as regards to terms and conditions of the loan, the businesses are eligible up to 6 times of EBITDA as a loan, and then with the interest rate of 4 to 5% and a repayable period of 5 years. So if any of the business, if they want to apply for MSP LP loan, have your accounts reviewed or audited. So because that is one of the criteria for banks to give the loan. And though the Fed has launched this program at the end of June, most of the banks are still struggling to take the applications because certain terms and conditions have not yet been finalized, or certain terms and conditions they are still negotiating with Fed. But I think if someone wants to explore this option, yeah, they can contact us and we can give a kind of overall guidance.
Okay. Thank you, Satya. Thank you, Ashleen. Ladies and gentlemen, if you still have questions, please post to the chat box. We are going to answer the questions that have already been posted. Some of them may have already been done so in the initial phase, but just for clarity, Satya and Ashley, if you see it's a repeat, try to answer it in a very short manner. The first question is, I have applied for a loan and have received it. Can I apply again? Satya?
Yeah, I can answer this question. So if you have applied for PPP loan, no, there is, I think there is no option of applying it as a second time. Because anyway, loan is limited to 2.5 times of your payroll of 2019. You must have already got that loan at the time of initial application itself, and there is no second round of PPP program in place now.
Satya, we cannot see your screen.
I think I am not sharing the screen now anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, I think the last page where our contact information is.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Ashleen, to apply for the PPP loan, is there what is the minimum number of employees to be on payroll? Did SBA fix any such minimum rule for that? Can one employee apply for it? One employee company?
Yes, so there is no such minimum restriction that you need to have at least this many number of employees, even if the business has one employee. As long as it's before Feb 15th, they are good to go. They're good to apply.
Okay. The next question, Satya, is if I use the amount from PPP within 8 weeks, will I be eligible for forgiveness?
I think it's a two-part question. Yeah. So if someone uses all the PPP funds within 8 weeks, and if they received the loan before June 5th, they can apply forgiveness under 8-week program. Or if they received the loan after June 5th, no, they have to, I think they have to go for 24-week option only. But having said that, so the businesses, there is no need to wait till the end of 24 weeks. They can still apply for forgiveness as soon as they use the funds.
Okay. I believe, Satya, you also answered this question, but just for the benefit of the listener, is PPP loan taxable?
So PPP, once the forgiveness is granted by the bank, then it's considered as a kind of a forgiven loan as a income, like as per general rules, it is taxable. But Treasury specifically mentioned that even though this PPP is forgiven loan, it's not taxable. Then IRS says that okay, even if it is not taxable, then IRS says that they don't allow the expenses that were incurred out of using the PPP funds. So indirectly it is taxable. Basically at the end of the year, for example, if your total payroll is $1 million, and out of that you use PPP funds of $200,000 and pay the payroll, then your allowable deduction is only $800,000.
Okay, thank you, Satya. Ashlyn, are IT companies allowed to take EIDL loan?
Yes, absolutely. They can certainly apply for the EIDL loans. A lot of our clients have also received the EIDL loans already. So yes, go ahead. It is still on. Please do apply.
All right, thank you. Satya, can I repay the PPP loan before completion of the covered period?
Don't get the question answer. So repay means returning the funds to, okay.
Yeah, I believe that's what the person means.
Okay. So we need to understand what's the reason for repayment. If it is that they don't want to use it, or they are not meeting the conditions, then of course means repayment. Okay, to give you exact answer to this question, repayment can be done at any point of time. So you can just approach the bank and tell them that we want to repay full amount. So they'll take it. But I think I would recommend to the borrower to see the reasons for repayment, basically.
All right, thank you, Satya. Ashlyn, is healthcare expense considered payroll expense or non-payroll expense?
It is a payroll cost, but it will not be considered as part of that $100,000 limit. So salaries, bonus, and commissions, etc., are part of that $100,000 limit, where we are, calculating on a weekly basis. But then other payroll costs, such as healthcare and retirement benefit, are part of payroll costs, but it will not be under that limit.
All right, thank you, Ashlyn. Satya, is there any limit on the PPP loan in terms of can companies only incorporated in US apply for it, or can a foreign corporation having a branch or subsidiary in US also apply for it? Meaning the shareholder under the corporation, is there any limit on that?
For application of PPP, so all US businesses can apply for the PPP loan. So that the business has to be incorporated in US. And yeah, the owners, I think the question is related to the ownership of the business. If a US business is owned by foreign company, still they are eligible to apply for the PPP loan. Okay. So basically, there are two conditions. One, business has to be incorporated in US, and the employees has to be in US.
All right. Thank you, Satya. Ashlyn, one person asks, I have been approved for PPP. Can I still apply for Main Street? I believe that might be a different loan, EIDL probably.
No, so Main Street Lending is another program available. Satya mentioned about it in his last slide. So yes, absolutely. There are two entirely different loans. PPP is a forgiven loan. Main Street Lending is a low interest loan. Yes, they can definitely apply for it.
All right. Thank you, Ashlyn. Satya, do we need to inform SBA about the option of choosing 8-week or 24-week before forgiveness? Is that a requirement?
No, there is no need to inform SBA. SBA is nowhere involved in this process. It's the banks mainly. So once the conditions are met, once the documentation is ready, then we just need to apply it to the bank and choosing 8-week or 24-week option.
Okay. Ashlyn, can you just give a very, because we are running out of time, can you just discuss very in a limited time the Q2 941, Form 941? Seems that IRS expanded the form to cover elements of PPP. Have you seen the redesigned 941? Is there anything of that sort covered in that?
Yes, so not for PPP per se, it is covering a lot of elements of CARES Act and other benefits which are being offered by the government, such as deferral of social security taxes. You know, the businesses can actually defer, even if they've gotten PPP, they can defer their social security taxes 50% they can repay in 2021 and 50% in next year. So, that has been reflected in 941 Q2 onwards, and then also to report FFCRA credits if the company is taking that credit instead of PPP. You know, so it depends on how the company is approaching. It might not apply to all. And so if there is any specific question, we can discuss in detail. You can email us the query and we can discuss that in detail.
Thank you, Ashlyn. Satya, the very final question, because we are almost running out of the hour. Can a company with 0 employees apply for the loan?
No, if it is related to PPP, no, not at all, because the PPP, the main intention is to give the loan for the businesses to maintain the employees. So with 0 employees, you cannot apply for PPP loan.
Also, I would like to add here, if it's a, depending on if it's a sole proprietor, it's a partnership with partners where they're being subject to employment taxes, which I covered previously. Those people, even if they're without employees, they can apply. But like Satya mentioned, corporations without employees cannot.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Satya, for giving such a beautiful insight into this complex PPP program. Ladies and gentlemen, on the call, we are up on the hour. The program will conclude here. Thank you so much for logging in and attending this function. We have posted our contact information. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to answer them for you. You can set up an appointment with Satya and Ashlyn and take this up further. Thank you so much. This concludes the session.
Thank you, Jagan. Thank you, everyone.